Welcome everyone. Today we have an interesting episode. We are talking about cooling vests. We all know the globe is heating, the heat waves are hitting harder, and there's also in sports sciences many athletes cool themselves before competition to have a competitive edge. And today we are joined by José Näf. He's the co-founder of Duracool, which is making cooling vests and also electrodes like we had earlier episodes. They are specialists in different materials and are applying them to different contexts. So thank you, Jose, for taking the time and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Olli, for having me here.
Yeah, great to have you. So if we start with the different cooling vest technologies, you can use different methods in the cooling vest. Could you give us like a rough overview of different technologies that are available for this?
Yeah, you could basically talk about 4 different technologies. One of them, it's a evaporative technology, which works by evaporating water. So it's similar like when somebody has fever and, for example, puts a cloth which is humid. So through the evaporation, it will cool down the forehead. And the same you can apply also for cooling vests by having a sponge or by having a vest with semi-permeable membranes or by just having a cool cloth on the shoulders or on the body. And the second technology is the phase-changing materials, which normally are basically loaded in the fridge or in the freezer. And once they're cold enough, you can use them as a cooling material and they will release slowly, a little bit stronger than the evaporation, but still more slowly than, for example, ice bags, the cooling. And then we have also the cooling vest with electronics, for example, a fan included. So that would be with battery, and then there will be an airflow and maybe a distance between the channels where the airflow is going through, and then it will blow out at the neck. And the last one could be also, for example, ice itself, like ice packs, which you put in a vest, which are very strong at the beginning, but then like phase out quite fast.
Yeah, so different technologies. And how do you see the application and pros and cons of different methods? Probably there's a use for each of them. What are kind of the main categories? Where do you use each of them?
So phase-changing materials are especially used when you need a strong cooling at the beginning. So in like professional sports, they do have phase-changing materials. And there's also to mention that gel, like it could also be a very strong water-absorbent gel that is not phase-changing material, that is more evaporation. So, but in sports, you sometimes also use the gel when you are running, during your running. But then at the beginning, it's mostly the strong cooling, like ice packs or phase-changing materials. And then the firefighters, they also use phase-changing materials, or people who work in the lab and have, like, for example, protection gear, because you don't need any evaporation there. It's just giving you the cooling directly through this changing of the materials without needing to evaporate, and which is not possible when you have a special protection gear anyway. And then the evaporation gears, they are often used when you need a cooling, but a less strong one. So for example, people who are maybe have certain conditions, like people who are in the wheelchair, like who have tetraplegia, and maybe have a condition that they don't sweat anymore. So the evaporation, it's in a way artificial sweating. So it creates a cooling for the body, which is much more comfortable and also longer lasting than phase-changing materials. And the last one, the fans, we know it from the daily life when we are in a room. Sometimes we use a fan. Obviously, you have it also in clothing. There are some applications for firefighters, but it's not often seen. And also in the daily life, there are also some fan application in the clothing, but the problem is the vest blows up and it doesn't look very nice. So it obviously you don't want to look like a Michelin mannequin or like the logo of the Michelin tires. So it's not so popular. What you see more often is a neck airflow, which works okay when you want to kind of keep a fresh head during work or during the summer, but it's also not seen so much, especially because it doesn't look that nice neither. It's quite bulky. And a lot of people don't like always to have the airflow like running through their ears.
Yeah. So different technologies, like I could imagine the ice pack, it feels very uncomfortable to actually have ice against you and it probably gets wet. Is it more like an older technology that is not preferred anymore, or is there still use cases for the ice packs?
So the ice packs in sports, after sports or before sports is still used, and especially got very popular with the ice bathing. So in a way, the question is that a cooling vest? Probably not, except you put it in the vest. There are some vests where you can just put in ice packs or phase changing materials, but it's still used. Or for example, for very particular cooling of parts, that is very common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with the ice bath and other things, there is strong marketing for it and people do
Yes.
it. But the science is basically showing that it slows down your recovery. It slows down your recovery from injuries. And I think the only time to use it is that if you have a competition next day, you want to limit, for example, you competed today and you have a competition tomorrow and you want to limit the muscle damage and you just need to perform the next day the best, then you might need to use ice. But in any other situation, like for example, after every training, it's just not beneficial. It's actually detrimental for your recovery. But yeah, they make a good business and nice stories of sacrificing yourself going to the ice bath. But to my understanding, the science is pretty strong that you shouldn't use it. But that goes a little bit on a tangent. Then you said about the phase change materials. What does it actually mean, a phase change? Is it a chemical thing that it changes a phase, or what does it actually mean?
Yeah, so basically you have a material which is activated, for example, by cold, that it absorbs the cold quite well. I mean, in a way, water is also a phase-changing material, but then compared to water, it releases the cold less fast. So it holds longer. And there are some composition, but the principle is always the same. It's that you need an activation before using it. And you have it in both sides. You have also phase-changing material when, like, for example, maybe you remember as a kid or even nowadays that they were quite in, like these little bags where you activate them by pressing a metal would create an electrical discharge, and then the material would start to be very warm.
Yeah.
And but even then, you have to activate it later with hot water, that it's liquid again before you can reuse it. And that is an advantage, but also a disadvantage. For the heat, obviously, it's an advantage because you can activate it whenever you want. For the cooling, it's a disadvantage because you need to have a freezer nearby, or you need to have like these bags which maintain the cool or maintain the cold, like these ice bags in a way.